So I'm going to talk about RelaxNG as it's going to be used in DITA 1.3, and also show you the ability that you will have as soon as I make the code available in some appropriate place to use this today with your own stuff. So that's very exciting. All right, just to remind you who I am in case there's somebody here who doesn't know, which is hard to imagine. But anyway, I've been doing this a long time. Member of the DITA technical committee from the very beginning, and I do contribute to the DITA Open Toolkit. I also am responsible for the DITA for Publishers project, which is a set of additional toolkit plugins that provide things like EPUB transforms, or we have an HTML5 transform that we're developing, and other stuff like that. So I wrote a book. There you go. Yes, so a brief demonstration. I'm actually going to do the demonstration at the end just because I don't want to spend a lot of time switching between PowerPoint and not PowerPoint, which always makes things go terribly wonky. But I do have code that works, or at least it worked 15 minutes ago, which is no guarantee. Yes, so we'll talk about what RelaxNG is, its relationship now to DITA, talk about DITA document types and modules, what is that stuff. Can give you a quick overview of a RelaxNG shell, and then we'll actually see how easy it is to do this stuff. So the executive summary of my talk that I give about RelaxNG is it makes everything so much better. So much better. Thank you, George, for bringing this to us. I cannot thank you enough. Yeah, so it makes it better. RelaxNG as a technology is a very good match for DITA. It really matches well the way DITA thinks about vocabulary and schemas and modularity and so forth. You can generate conforming DTD and XSD files from RelaxNG. Right, you can do that. You can do that today. The code is there. It works. And that's what I'll be demonstrating later. And so what this means, there's no need to fight with DTD and XSD syntax anymore for DITA. Right, so how many people here have ever touched a DITA, DTD, shell, or whatever? I am so sorry. But the message I can bring you is that you should never, ever have to do that again. And that would not be soon enough to never have to do that again. I must also apologize. Does anybody here really, really like XSDs? Nobody? All right, well, you guys can leave. So I'm not a big fan of XSDs. That will probably come through in anything I say on this subject. But we do generate also the XSDs to the degree that it is possible for them to be generated, which is a problem with XSDs. But anyway, it's there as well. But the focus of what I've been doing and what I'll show is DTDs. So this is the demonstration that I have prepared. We can create a new document type shell, create a new domain specialization, create a new topic specialization, generate the DTD and XSD versions of all of these grammars, and then show that they work. And in fact, if you saw my 5-minute talk on Tuesday, I actually did that in those 5 minutes. Well, I mean, I didn't do the implementation in the 5 minutes, but I did the generation in 5 minutes. But in fact, the implementation of what I did generate from in RelaxNG didn't take more than about 10 minutes. All right, so what is RelaxNG? So RelaxNG is a grammar language for XML documents. The DITA TC, we went back and forth, but we decided that the term grammar was the most appropriate general term for things that define the rules for XML documents. So when we refer to grammars here, we mean RelaxNG, DTD, XSD, schematron, anything else you might have that would define the rules for documents. So it's a grammar language for XML documents. RelaxNG in particular is really a grammar in the sense of defining the rules by which you construct sentences, as opposed to XSD, which is really trying to be a schema in the database sense. So this is a difference in philosophy between RelaxNG and XSD, for example. It's an OASIS and an ISO standard. It's most like DTD. So if you're familiar with DTDs and the way DTDs think about content models and so forth, RelaxNG will seem very familiar, but easier to use. RelaxNG is designed to be as simple as possible, right? So the designer said, well, what's the least we can do to have something that's really useful? And you could contrast that with XSD. If you're interested in my opinions on that, you can find my paper that I gave at Balasage this summer, where I go into the issues that we had with XSDs and why RelaxNG is so much better. You can go look at that paper. And RelaxNG is also used for other XML standards, prominently DocBook. So, you know, all the other cool kids are using RelaxNG, right? DocBook, TEI, even NLM has a RelaxNG schema. Why doesn't DITA have it? We were starting to feel kind of, you know, like the kids left out, right? We're still there with our DTDs. Oh, yeah, look, parameter entities, fun. Yeah, so, you know, I would run into Norm Walsh, and he was kind of, you know, give me a hard time about, yeah, hey, was your RelaxNG DITA guy? So, take that, Norm. Yeah, so, Norm's a great guy. I love him like a brother, but yeah, he had RelaxNG. So RelaxNG has two syntaxes that they are equivalent. There's an XML syntax. You can see on the top, grammar, some stuff. On the bottom, you have a character syntax. You can switch between these two. They're exactly equivalent. For the purposes of the DITA standard, we're developing everything in the XML form. I find that much easier to work with than the character form, but there's some people who like the character form. Interestingly, if you open the XML form in Oxygen and you push the author button, it looks like that. Very clever. All right, so a RelaxNG grammar defines a set of patterns. And those patterns are the patterns that a document must match. RelaxNG is actually a regular expression language. So you're defining a regular expression that your document has to match. And if you get to a point where the regular expression doesn't match the document, document's invalid. If you get to the end of your regular expression and everything matched, document's valid. Patterns can have names, and those are analogous to parameter entities and DTDs. Pattern combination mechanisms are more flexible than DTD parameter entities or XSD groups. And it is this aspect of RelaxNG that George Bina realized turned out to provide some real magic for DITA. And we'll see that in a bit. And of course, grammars can be modularized into multiple files, right? I mean, nobody would design a grammar language that didn't have some sort of modularization feature. All right, so that's a very quick introduction to RelaxNG. So RelaxNG and DITA. Why did we do this? Well, it's a very good match to DITA requirements, right? DITA is all about vocabulary modularity, vocabulary extensibility, vocabulary composability, in the sense that I can take different vocabulary modules, bring them together as I choose, everything works, right? That's the magic of DITA, is that I can have exactly the vocabulary I want for my documents, and yet everything should interoperate smoothly on the widest possible scale. Right? That is the magic of DITA. And RelaxNG makes that even easier. Right? So the pattern-based approach works well with the modular vocabulary. So patterns can allow themselves to be extended by other patterns. Right? Patterns can unilaterally extend other patterns. Right? That is, I can define a pattern that points at another pattern and say, I extend this pattern. And that turns out to be really powerful, and that's the thing that really sells RelaxNG for DITA. What this does is it makes combining vocabularies as easy as it could possibly be, barring some artificial intelligence that does it for you. And I will demonstrate just how easy that can be. And when George showed us this a couple of years ago, it was, I think, at DITA North America in Providence. Was it La Jolla? Anyway. It was a few years ago, but I was there, Michael Priestley was there, George gave this paper, and we were like, yes, we want that. We want that. We want that now. And now, a few years later, we've made it a reality. So there's no added overhead. So it's much easier to use syntax than either DTDs or XSDs. It avoids the conceptual and syntactic complexity of XSDs. And it's a very close semantic match to existing DTD-defined rules. So if you're used to the DTDs, then you don't need more than what you can say with DTDs, which is really the case for most document-centric grammars. then moving from DTD to RelaxNG is very easy conceptually. You don't have a whole lot of things to relearn or new things to learn. The one thing that it does require, and the reason that we hadn't used RelaxNG up till now, was that DITA depends on default attributes, right? The magic class attribute, the magic domains attribute, these are attributes that must be present on every element in order for DITA processing to work, but you would never want to have them be explicit on every element in every document. That would be madness, right? Nobody would do that. So without some way of having attribute defaulting, we couldn't use it. And RelaxNG, the base RelaxNG standard, in fact, doesn't have a mechanism for default attributes. But there's a companion standard, the RelaxNG DTD compatibility specification, which does provide attribute defaults. But the common RelaxNG tools, the Jing system, had not implemented that. So again, our hero, George Bina, implemented that for us. He's like, well, I'll just do it, right? It's not that hard. So he did that. Boom, problem solved. So once we can get default attributes from RelaxNG-based documents, it works fine. So in fact, we can do that today. We're still in the process of getting that bit of tooling integrated into the Open Toolkit, but it will be there. George and I will go, we'll have a very sharp conversation with Yarno later and make sure that happens. But no, it's not a big deal. Just a couple of jars have to be added. So what does this mean? Everything is awesome, right? My life in particular, and really that's all I care about, has become much, much easier because in my job, and in my spare time, I'm writing new vocabulary all the time. I'm creating new shells. I'm defining new specializations. I'm doing that all the time, and if I never have to look at another DTD file again, it will be too soon. So I hate that. Fiery passion of 1,000 burning suns. So we can now generate our DTDs and our XSDs from the RelaxNG grammars. So much better. So, and what that does really, I care about more than myself, really. It makes it easy for anybody. I say anybody. Anybody in this, certainly anybody in this room. But I would say anybody who has any interest in applying DITA to a documentation problem can now configure their own DITA document types. If you can manage a file with angle brackets in it, you can do this. It is that easy. That is my claim to you today. All right, so just give you a quick background. How much more time do I have, George? 20 minutes. 20 minutes, okay. I'll try to go quickly. All right, so just for some conceptual background, because this is an aspect of DITA that not everybody fully appreciates, but it's very important. So a DITA document type is not a grammar file. It's not a DTD file. It's not an XSD file. A DITA document type is, in fact, a unique set of vocabulary and constraint modules. Any two documents that use the same set of constraint and vocabulary modules, by definition, have the same DITA document type. Now, one may use a RelaxNG, one may use an XSD, one may use a DTD, one may not have anything, but they are using the same DITA document type. Another very important aspect of DITA, and this is one that really trips up a lot of people who've been doing XML and SGML for a long time, is that every modules are invariant. That is, once you define a module, topic type, domain specialization, and map type, every copy of that for a given version in time should be exactly identical. You never change those. Right? The vocabulary modules that we produce out of the DITA Technical Committee, they're in every copy of the DITA Open Toolkit. You never touch them. If I hear about anybody touching one, I will hunt you down. Because you should never touch those, right? We have designed this system, this beautiful, elegant system, so that you never have to touch the files. You can configure them through your shells, right? That's very different from other XML vocabularies which give you a bunch of DTDs and say, go change them however you want, without constraint. And that always really goes really well. So, yeah, you don't modify those, right? You implement your document types by integrating, that's the term that the standard uses, your vocabulary and constraint modules using a document type shell, right? So a document type shell integrates modules to form a working document schema or grammar, right? You're going to refer to the vocabulary and constraint modules that you want. You're going to do any configuration required. So maybe you want to say, there's some configuration twiddles you can do there. For example, what nested topic types are or are not allowed, right? So if you have two document type shells that integrate the same set of modules, by definition, right, by definition of the DITA specification, they implement the same DITA document type, right? It doesn't matter that they're different files. It doesn't matter they have different public IDs or URNs or that they're owned by different people. They're still defining the same DITA document type. Right? What does that mean? That means if you want to have a topic that looks exactly like the technical communication topic that the TC provides for you, all you have to do is copy that file, give it a public identifier of your own choosing. You now have your own shell, but it's the same DITA document type, right? But it's the file itself, the file that is defining your local version of that DITA document type is yours, not the TC's. You never modify the TC's shells, right? You never modify the TC shells. And if I hear of anybody doing that, I will hunt you down. Because now you can make your own shell, right? Just give you a quick overview, and this is not really intended to be a tutorial, but this is what a typical grammar file looks like. I've left out the header comment because that's just a lot of noise, but basically you've got the start element, so you can explicitly say topic documents must start with the element topic. You have your domains attribute, which is the formal declaration of your DITA document type. Very important attribute. Nobody ever checks it, but it's very important. This is the essential secret sauce after the class attribute in DITA. It's very important. Nobody ever checks it, but it's there. And then we have an include list of modules. That is it. I'm done. Well, there's one other little bit that RNG defines requires. It's just we have to deal with it. George and I are thinking about ways to fix it. Yes, question. Yes, so the relax-NG grammar provides an element type called div, which is just an arbitrary container, so it lets you group the elements in your grammar file in whatever way you'd like. So I've developed some conventions for how to do that just make the files neater. So if you open this up in an editor like Oxygen, it becomes really easy to work with it structurally, as opposed to like DTDs where you've got to like search on those comments or whatever. Yeah. So to integrate a module, you just reference it. I'm done. I'm done. Right? That's all I got to do. If you need to, like in the case of your info types, right, when I refer to a topic module, I can say what topic types are allowed to nest. I do that directly in the inclusion. I can override patterns through my inclusion, and that's actually the same way you do constraints, but a little bit, you have to have a separate file. Yeah, so modules are self-integrating, and this is the magic that George showed us. And when George showed us this magic at that meeting in DITA North America, our minds exploded. We were like, wow, we want that so badly. So it's really cool. So I defined my same domain integration pattern. In a DTD, this would be that parameter entity that you have to do in your shell, and everybody always gets that right and never fails. So yeah, so this is the list of elements that are defined in this domain module. And then here I just say, for the pattern named phrase, which is defined in the base DITA vocabulary, combine equals choice, so combine this as a repeating OR group, or just as an OR group, add this pattern. I'm done. So when I pull that module into my shell, this takes care of all the integration for me. No additional work required. So the only time I would need to do something special is if I wanted to impose constraints, right? So let's say that you wanted to use the highlight domain, this is the highlight domain, but you didn't want to allow the TT or U elements, because who would ever want those? There's ways to do that. I'm not going to show them to you, but they're not that hard. So just by contrast, here is the first part of the equivalent DTD shell document, right? Equivalent to the grammar file I showed you, and it actually goes down off the screen about 3 or 4 meters into the basement. All right, so that's very quickly to show you. It really is tremendously easy. Right. So as part of the DITA 1.3 work, we've developed some XSLT tools that allow us now to generate the DTDs and XSDs from the RelaxNG. And we're not just generating files that work. We're generating files that themselves conform to the very tedious coding rules that we have defined in the DITA specification for DTDs and XSDs, and now RelaxNGs, right? This does require some DITA-specific metadata in the shells and modules, so we've defined some markup specific to DITA that once that markup's in your files, then the generation will work. Without that metadata, the generation process wouldn't know what to do. And this code is maintained by the DITA technical committee, maybe. We're still working out exactly who's responsible for maintaining it. I mean, in point of fact, I've written all this code, so I'm the guy at the moment. But it'll go somewhere and be maintained by somebody, probably me for the foreseeable future. But it's not, it's not rocket science. Well, yeah, a little bit of it is, but for the most part, it's not rocket science. All right, so in preparation, so what I had originally implemented worked for all the TC-defined vocabulary, because that was our immediate problem, right? For DITA 1.3, we've got to get the DTDs and the XSDs that working so that we can get to spec them. But that's not sufficient. I want to be able, for you and me as well, because I do this every day, to be able to generate from RelaxNG your own custom shells, your own specializations. So I have, and then because this is DITA-OT day, it would make sense to have this code be available through the Open Toolkit. So what we have today, we have an Open Toolkit plugin that has all of the DITA 1.3 grammars, so the DTDs, XSDs, RelaxNGs as a plugin, and then I've implemented a plugin that provides the conversion. I haven't figured since we haven't decided where that's going to go for public distribution. It's not there yet, but I haven't committed it to this SVN repository yet because I've only worked on it this week, but it'll be available. Define two transformation types, RNG-to-DTD. So if all you ever care about is DTDs, you don't want to see those XSDs, I give you the option to only generate DTDs, and then RNG-to-all will generate the DTDs, the RNCs, the XSDs with URLs, the XSDs with URNs, and all the catalogs you need. This does require Saxon 9.6 because there was some particular option I needed for catalogs that's not in the older Saxon, but that's easy to adjust in your toolkit. All right. There are some file organization requirements that I haven't taken the time to figure out how to get rid of. This just reflects the way that the TC has organized its grammar files historically, and so my generation code depends on that pattern to put things in the right place. So you need a top-level directory. I typically call it doc types. Then you need a directory named RNG. Then in that, you need directories for each different thing that you have. So like if you have like here, this would be for my indirector topic type and other ones. And then under each one of these, you have another directory named RNG that actually contains the grammar. So you get doc types, RNG, indirector, RNG. That's just how it is, and don't ask me why. But so right now, you just have to do that. If you want to generate something, use a trans type, RNG-to-DTD. You apply the transform to a file in the parent directory that contains all the RNG modules. The way my transforms are implemented is they expect to operate on a directory, and then under that directory, they just find all the RNG files and convert them. Because of the way the toolkit works, it expects to get a single file as its input, right? Normally, it would be a DITA map or a topic. Here, it's going to be any file at all. It doesn't matter. It's just going to use that to find the parent directory. So typically, you would have a catalog.xml file in your RNG directory that's the master catalog for all your stuff. So that's an obvious choice to choose there. By default, the process only generates your document type shells, because normally that would be what you'd want. Most DITA users would only ever be creating custom shells, right? The number of people actually creating specializations is much, much smaller. So by default, it just gives you shells. You can turn on the generation of modules, or you can turn on, you can indicate whether you want public IDs or direct URLs in your shells, and then whether or not you want to generate your catalogs. So part of the metadata in each of your modules is the public IDs, the URNs, to use for each thing that's going to be generated. So from that information, we can generate all the lookup catalogs. All right, and here's some resources. So the actual, all the stuff is in the TC maintain Subversion repository. So if you want to go and see that code, you can go get a read-only copy of that today. And yes, here's within that repository, here's where all the tools are. Of course, this is me. All right, so now let's see if we can do a quick demo. How much more time do I have, George? 10 minutes. All right, before I go into the demo, probably I should see if there's any questions. Yes, Chris or Mark.
I didn't see, what's the syntax for creating a default attribute?
What is the syntax for creating a default attribute? Very good question. That's defined in the compatibility, the RNG-to-DITA DTD compatibility specification. But the short answer is, if I could, hold on. Oh, I can find it really quick here. Find an example. Well, it'll be down here at the bottom. All right. So you can see, like right here. I don't know if you can see that in the back of the room, but there's a namespace that is defined in that compatibility specification. By convention, we give it the prefix A, and then there's an attribute default value. So on my attribute element, I can say the default value here is the actual class attribute for this element type. Is that? Yep. Yeah. Yes, Nick in the back. Could I increase the font size? I could. I could, yes. As I tell my daughter, the question you wanted to ask was, will I? Because that's a kind of mean parent I am. All right. Yeah, she hates me for that too. So, is that better? Is that better? Okay. Let's see if I can get back to where I was. It squeezes things up a little bit, but there's our default attribute value. Okay. So for my demo, what I'm going to show you here is a couple of things. You know, I thought that would work better, but it didn't. All right. So here is a custom document type shell. So this is should be representative of what you would do for your own stuff. So in this case, I'm creating a new shell, not just because I should always create a new shell, because you should always create a new shell, but because I need to integrate a new domain that I've also implemented. So you can see there's some header stuff. This is the DITA specific metadata. So here you can see these are the public identifiers, my URNs for all the different things I'm going to generate. My DTD shell, RNC, RNG, XSD. There's a bit more information here. You know, this module is in fact a topic shell. It's got a short name and so forth. All right, so all very interesting. Then here's the beginning of my shell itself, the start element, my domains attribute, which we never actually have to type. I'll show you that in a moment. Since this is a copy of the strict task shell that's part of the normal TC distribution, I actually have a constraint module here that's included. And then I have my module inclusions. And so the first part of this is just what comes from the TC. Well, it's not exactly what comes from the TC, because what comes from the TC just has direct URL references here. Right? Because the TC stuff is always shipped together, we could use URLs. I had to put in the URNs because my shell is somewhere different. I realized when I was doing this, I'm going to provide a starter set of shells that already has the URNs in there, and just put it somewhere like on DITA community so it's easy to get started. And then here at the bottom, right here, here's the reference to my custom domain, indirector domain mod. So if you saw my talk on Wednesday, I talked about this experimental thing I did called indirector. Here I'm just including that domain. And in this last bit, where it says ID defining element overrides, this is something that's required by a particularly unfortunate detail in the RELAX-NG specification having to do with how it handles elements that have attributes of type ID. Really what it comes down to is I just have to list my topic types here. So this is something that can be generated automatically for the most part. Don't worry about it. The only part that you really care about is this list of includes. When you're actually creating a new shell, really this is it. This is everything you have to do. And all you have to do is reference the shell. All you have to do. Right? And let me demonstrate that for you now. Make sure I'm in the right place. So, yes, all right. I just had to be careful because I'm working on files in 2 different locations. I want to make sure I'm working on the right one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out the reference to this domain, and then I'm going to regenerate the DTDs. So here, this catalog file is, I don't know, you can't see the tooltip, but anyway, this is the catalog file under the RELAX-NG. If you look at my project here, you can see that I have a doctypes directory, RELAX-NG directory, and then under that I have the main catalog file, and then under that are the individual topic type, domain, and so forth. So this is the file I'm going to apply my transform to. And here I'm going to apply the DITA RNG-to-DTD toolkit process. So we run that. We're generating the DTDs, generating the catalogs, and there it's done. Now I just need to deploy that plugin to my Open Toolkit, which I will do from the right command window here. I'm running a little Ant script called deploy toolkit plugins. Wait a second, no, not that one. I got to do it from the right directory. There we go. Right. So now I've just copied my plugin from its source location to the Open Toolkit, and now I will come back to my source files here. So here I have a task element that has an indirect XRF anchor element. That's the element that was defined in that domain that I commented out of my DTD. And this is a document that actually uses the RELAX-NG. It's going to validate it. It's going to tell me that it's invalid, that the anchor indirector ref element isn't there. So if I go back to my shell, see if we can. And where's my commented out thing? There it is. All right, I've commented my include back in. I'm going to rerun my generation process. Going to redeploy my toolkits. This is how I work moment by moment. All right, come back here to Oxygen. Validate my document, and it is valid. There you go. Is there any way that that could be easier? No, it's not. It says document is valid. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Yeah. Ignore the man behind the curtain. So yeah. So anyway, so there you go. That's my demonstration. There you go. So I don't ever want to hear anybody say again that I cannot create my own document type shell because it's too hard. Right? Because it couldn't be easier. You just add one line, point to a file, run the generation process. Well, I didn't even run the, actually I just deployed my DT. So I didn't actually prove that I had generated a DTD, did I? All right. So, George says I have 1 minute left. Let me. So somewhere here I have a test document. All right, so here, go away. So here I have a task. This time this is the same task content, but now it's using the DTD. You can see I have my doc type declaration and so forth. So now if I revalidate, it should be valid. All right. Making a late change to my module that somehow didn't get communicated. Why is that? Should be there. This is the content model for the indirector anchor element. It should allow text or data. This worked when I tested it earlier. Why isn't it working now? All right, well, I'm not going to try to debug this in my last minute. But anyways, there you go. So,
do you anticipate down the line that,
yeah.
Hi. Do you anticipate down the line that editing and CMS tools will use the RNG directly?
Do I anticipate that they'll use RNG directly? Certainly not in the short term. Right now, obviously, you can do it in Oxygen. You can always use RelaxNG and Oxygen. I wouldn't expect, XML and Architect's editor to do that. But, because why should they bother, right? Yeah, I mean, that's why it's so important that we were able to generate the DTDs and XSDs, right? We don't want to, we know that those are going to be those technologies are going to be, essential for decades.
I have a question. I noticed you had the schematron namespace in your RNG file. What's that about?
Yeah, so that's a clever thing that you can do is you can have embedded schematron rules in your grammar document, and then you can process the grammar document as a schematron document, and any schematron processor should do the right thing. Certainly in the case of Oxygen, Oxygen can use the grammar both for RelaxNG validation and for schematron validation. Right, so if you're defining your own specializations, for example, you could embed schematron rules in the RelaxNG grammar files for those specializations. Oxygen will certainly use them directly. You could also just simple XSLT to extract them as a separate schematron document for use with other tools. All right. All right. If there's no other questions, then thank you very much.